And I explained how just because someone turns 18 doesn't mean that they are no longer children. They no longer need the medicine that they're going to be getting. We talked about the 2-ounce limitation. I explained that 2 ounces of raw bud in the state of New Jersey is 10 days worth of medicine for my child. And I explained that if I were to do what the state program is asking me to do, give someone 10 days worth of medicine in a 30-day period, that the state would call DIFUS on me. And I asked if I could call DIFUS on them, since that's what they are asking me to do for my child. 10 days worth of meds. That doesn't include emergencies. That doesn't include extra meds that he may or may not need to get him through a crisis. And we talked about testing. I need accurate, consistent dosing and testing of the material that I'm giving my child. It's really important that we have that information and that kind of ability to give medicine if it's treated like medicine. And they agreed. They agreed that if I did not consistently give my son medicine, that, yeah, DIFUS would probably be called if I did that with a pharmaceutical drug. We talked about being in a hospital and not having protection or the ability to use or the ability not to talk about it. And I explained that right now Jack is still in the hospital. I cannot get my son out of the hospital right now because there is not a pharmaceutical drug that works, but he has to be on a pharmaceutical drug to get out of the hospital. So where's the quandary? Where's the quandrum of that whole entire situation where I've got a child who's so medically unstable he can't leave the hospital because he has to have a pharma, but the pharmas aren't working. Last Thursday he was in the hospital because he had metabolic acidosis. It's a side effect of one of the drugs he was on. It was so bad they had him on an IV drip of the bicarb to correct the metabolic acidosis, which FYI was not correcting. So they had to ditch that drug. So on Saturday they tried Dilantin. It almost killed him on Saturday. He wanted to crawl out of his skin. It's the worst experience I've ever had with a drug. My son was literally trying to scratch his eyes out of his head, rub his nose off his face, all from a drug. He was throwing himself over the side of a bed. It was horrible. He was crying inconsolably for 8 hours. But I can't give him cannabis because I live in New Jersey. He's a card holder, but I don't have enough. I can't treat him and treat the symptoms that I'm seeing because he has to be on a pharmaceutical. I explained that it is a responsibility that I tell the hospital, but I can't because they're going to kick us out. We also talked about insurance coverage, Medicaid coverage, the cost the state is getting in savings of my son being off all these ineffective drugs. I also talked to them about Mr. O'Brien, the one who's running the medical marijuana program, not returning my calls. How many of you guys have made phone calls to Mr. O'Brien and he's never called you back? Quite a few of you, and that's absolutely the truth. We need communication. We need someone to call back and say, yes, this is the answer to your question, or hey, I'll look into that. My son's being kicked out of the hospital. You know what? They can't do that, or they can do that, or this is how we can fix it. We need to find a way to operate within this program for everybody, whether they're young or old, no matter what the disease. And we also discussed more qualifying conditions. Didn't get very far. There were no answers. I will leave it to them to tell you whether I did good or bad. But we did talk about the pending legislation. There's quite a few different pieces of legislation that are pending. We did discuss different options with that. And hopefully we do have an ongoing conversation and we do come back to the table and have open communication to fix a program that offers no compassion once you get your card. And once you become a card holder, it's no longer a medical-based program, it is a politically based program. And we need change. Thank you guys for coming and coming every week. And we're gonna have more speakers.
All right.
Hello, I'm Ken Walsky, Executive Director of the Coalition for Medical Marijuana in New Jersey. I was very glad to take part in the meeting with the health department officials and members of Governor Christie's staff today in talking about the need for expanding the medicinal marijuana program. It was through Jenny's efforts that we got this meeting, and hopefully something positive will come of the meeting. The officials seemed pretty determined to limit the scope of the meeting to expanding the program for edibles for adults, which of course is the main issue with Jenny's son Jackson. But I pointed out, and I gave the health department officials and the other people in the meeting some additional information. I just let them know that the medicinal marijuana program really is a disappointment to so many people who thought that they would be protected by this law, and who thought that they would be able to access safe and legal medical marijuana through this law. But it's just not working for them. And we support Assemblywoman Linda Stender's bill, A 3525, and I gave them a list of the changes that would take place in A 3525, and any edible form would be permitted for any age. Any edible form of marijuana would be permitted for any age, and that's just one of the stipulations in this bill. But one of the main things is that it would eliminate the physician registry. This physician registry is really a terrific bottleneck for the Medical Marijuana Act. And also, it would expand the conditions. It would include post-traumatic stress disorder, Alzheimer's disease, Lyme disease, Parkinson's disease, hepatitis, nail patella syndrome, and any condition that causes chronic pain, severe nausea, or cachexia, or the wasting syndrome. So the health department was empowered to expand the qualifying conditions when the medical marijuana bill passed in 2010, but here it is 4.5 years later, and still there's not even the beginning of the expansion of this program. So Linda Stender's bill would take this out of the hands of the health department and expand the program through legislation. And of course, Stender's bill would also restore home cultivation for qualified patients. Patients would be able to grow 4 plants plus 1 or more mother plants, or they could designate a licensed grower to grow plants for them, or they could use the alternative treatment centers. And there would be no limit on the alternative treatment centers, no upper limit on the number of alternative treatment centers that would be available through the with the expansion of this program. Of course, Linda Stender's bill would also protect organ transplant patients who use marijuana protect them from being disqualified simply for the use of medical marijuana. Stender's bill would also eliminate the tax on medical marijuana. Right now there's a 7% tax that's imposed by the Christie administration on medical marijuana, and no other medicine in the state of New Jersey is taxed, not prescription drugs nor non-prescription drugs, only marijuana. This bill would also include explicit employee protections. It would make it unlawful to take adverse employee actions against an employee simply for the use of medical marijuana, unless that marijuana is interfering with the job performance. And it would make it, Stender's bill would make it easier for caregivers. Caregivers would, right now caregivers have to undergo a criminal background check just for the privilege of obtaining marijuana for their sick loved one. They have to undergo a criminal background check at their own expense, and they have to pay $200 for an ID card. It would eliminate the ID card fee, and it would eliminate the background check for caregivers. And it would reduce the patient ID card from $200 to $50, and there would be no automatic expiration date on these patient ID cards, so that the patients do not have to renew them every 2 years. This bill would also eliminate the requirement for psychiatric clearance for minors, but it would keep the pediatrician requirement. You know, it's ridiculous to have a 2-year-old child have to see a psychiatrist before they can get medical marijuana. You know, what's the psychiatrist going to say to the 2-year-old? You know, why are you here? And very importantly, it would require initial and ongoing training for all state, county, and local law enforcement officers on the rights of patients, growers, and caregivers. These law enforcement officers would be trained on field sobriety tests, and they would no longer be able to convict someone of driving under the influence simply on the basis of a blood or a urine test. and law enforcement officers would be forbidden to damage or destroy medical marijuana that does not exceed the maximum amount authorized. Physicians would be required to determine the form, the strain, and the amount of medical marijuana for their patients, and it would eliminate the 2-ounce a month limit. The amount that physicians would be able to recommend for their patients would be determined by the need of the patient and not some arbitrary limit imposed by the health department. And it would allow patients to obtain medical marijuana from out of state if necessary. And furthermore, it would honor the ID cards from out of state patients, so that patients who were legitimate medical marijuana patients in other states would not be considered criminals when they come to New Jersey for vacations or to visit loved ones. It would drastically change the way alternative treatment centers are run. The permit fees for alternative treatment centers would be cut from the current $20,000 for a permit to $5,000 for a permit. And there would be no upper limit on the number of alternative treatment centers that are permitted. Right now, there's only 6 that are permitted and only 3 that are operational. And of course, there would be no strain or potency limits imposed on the marijuana cultivator. And the dispensaries may dispense a 60-day supply of marijuana instead of the current 30-day limit. And of course, as I said before, any edible form of marijuana would be approved for any age. This is just one of the many provisions that Linda Stender's bill, A 3525, would make to comprehensively reform the medicinal marijuana program. It would establish dosage units in all forms of marijuana in conjunction with the Department of Health, so that you would know exactly what the dosage would be for the edible forms that you would be getting, and also the inhaled forms. And it would provide for testing in licensed laboratories for each batch of marijuana, and on request at any time, for the chemical composition, for biological contaminants, for pesticides, for solvents, and for foreign material, with the results of those testing available on request. And finally, and most importantly, the Department of Health would be explicitly prohibited from issuing overly restrictive or unduly burdensome regulations to enact this law. So, because we learned from last time, when the Compassionate Use Medical Marijuana Act passed in 2010, that the Department of Health did issue these overly burdensome regulations that have really hampered the full implementation of the medicinal marijuana program. So it was a productive meeting, and we got to have our say to certain officials in the health department and the Christie administration, and we just hope that some productive changes come about as a result of this meeting. Thank you all for your attention.
All right.
Next, introduce yourself. Or play musical chairs. He gets to stage.
How's everybody doing today? Yeah.
Okay, how are we all doing today? Put your hand together for that guy putting his hand was on. Yeah, I'm Jim Miller, co-founder of Coalition. For those of you that know me, yes, it's me. It's a suit, the best I can do, but it's still me. And my wooden tie is my lucky tie. I know things went well today. Jenny and Ken, I think, summed it up pretty good. What I'd like to bring up was a couple of things I thought that they found pretty telling. We went in there, we showed them our cards. It's like playing poker. And in the middle of the game, you lay your cards down and you want to keep playing. Well, they don't, because they know they didn't have the hand we did. So they were very good listeners. And I don't mean that sarcastically. They were being very good listeners. The communication between Jenny and the Assistant Secretary of Health, whose expertise is pediatrics, he's a physician, was unmistakable, that he understood every word, and he'll be able to explain it to the Chief Policy Advisor for Healthcare, Robert Schwanenberg. The points that I made that I felt most satisfied about was to put it in context about the 7% tax. That if this is a medically based program, you don't tax medicine. So they tax this. It's either to say we're trying to send a message that it's not medicine by virtue of taxing it, or we're full of shit. We don't think it's a medically based program. We want to look that way. But either way, you don't tax medicine. It's not so much for the money. I reminded them that when it comes to pension reform, everything is on the table. When it comes to marijuana law reform, everything is not on the table. And it should be. That 7% tax isn't just something that's hard to afford. I believe fully 9 out of 10 patients cannot afford their full 2 ounces that cost $1,000. Now, if they can't afford their full dose of medicine, it means they're already not getting enough. To assess a 7% tax isn't just revenue for the state. It isn't just that it is a new Chris Christie tax. It's that it costs them 2 days a month of their medicine. That 7%, if it were spent on their medicine, would give them roughly 2 more days each. This tax is costing them 2 days relief every month. That didn't sound good at all. I almost started to feel sorry for him, but that's a real big almost. The other thing I felt most satisfied about was they had nowhere to hide in this meeting at all. I think what sums it up best, we can take a clue from the initial parameters that the policy advisor would at times occasionally interrupt, not to be rude, but to make a point to further an area of discussion where we might have differences. He warned us that he was going to bring up things that we would have differences about so we could discuss them. That didn't happen once. After warning us about that in the beginning, not one time did they have a point of contention where they disagreed with anything that was said all day long. So normally I'd say that's just because they'd rather not say anything, they want to be non-committal, but once somebody warns you, yeah, we're going to disagree a little bit about some things today, and then they sit there and don't once, it's because it is not the meeting they expected. They expected a cakewalk. They did not expect Jenny Storms. They did not expect her at all. And yes, she was a grieving, a mother with grief over her son, not grieving for the loss, but yes, for a loss of part of his life while he's still alive. They got that, but they also got answers to any question they had at any level of medical knowledge necessary, so that at times it was pretty much Jenny communicating with the doctor while the rest of us were nodding our heads figuring that's probably true. I think the communication lines are undeniably open at this point to deny Jenny access to follow-ups. Questions such as, what about the moratorium? Was that the administration or the health department? Well, they were both there in the room. They could have said but didn't. And that's a point of contention that we need to have addressed later. There's going to be several of them. But for those of you who are like me and did not like the way they were supposed to file yearly reports, and after their first yearly report in 2011, 2 years later, a moratorium of 2 years till new indications could be added. 2013, it's what, 2014 now? Yeah, last year that was supposed to start. So what happened? They didn't file the reports. Not at 1 year, not at 2 years, not at 3 years. They disobeyed and ignored the law until it was brought to court, and the court ordered that they had to follow the law. 30 days later, they filed a report that was after the 2-year moratorium should have been over, because it says that begins after filing the first report. Now that they delayed that, by ignoring the law, they now hide behind that and say we're not going to accept applications for new indications till 2 years after the first report, like the law says. So they disobey the law when they want, and they hide behind it when it suits them. To present that in front of them with not so much as a head shake, we're showing them our cards. It wasn't a good look. There were several things that weren't a good look. I'm sure they were very thankful that y'all weren't here with any cameras or recorders then. And when it was over, we weren't even allowed to take a picture because, as policy advisor said, it would make them uncomfortable. And God knows we don't want to make them uncomfortable, do we? So I think the proper characterization I agree with is guarded optimism. eyes wide open, but they cannot go back on this now and not return Jenny's calls or Ken's. So I'm hoping that we can find a way to get at least the sickest off the battlefield. For people who are hospice patients and need edibles, I'd like to think we can work on a statement from the governor that he would sign a standalone bill if that what it was about, and he would not conditionally veto it if it were part of a larger package. I don't think it's a stretch to say that I believe that will be the first thing that happens. That'll be the next compromise. He'll have the credible evidence he says he needs, and I think that's going to be the first flinch. See if I'm right, we'll find out. But good day. Thanks Jenny and Ken for having me in there. I've never been to the second floor. I've been coming here since '93. I didn't even know there was a second floor. We got something rolling. I think they're on their heels a little bit. It wasn't the meeting they expected, and I think they're going to exhibit due caution when dealing with Jenny and Ken in the near future. In that respect, total success. There's nothing that I think was left unsaid. There's nothing that Jenny forgot. There's nothing Ken did or didn't say that needed to be said, or me. I've never been to a meeting in my life where I could stand there an hour later without going, oh, you know what I should have said? Not once. That also tells me it was a success in that respect. So I think we have potential to move forward. And thanks to the approximately 30 people who showed up today, this is noticeably better than usual, and it will not be lost on anybody else. I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible next Thursday, because Jenny is nowhere near being satisfied with things to stop this yet, I can assure you that. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you, Jim. Don't slip. I one note for next week. They have the Arbor Day people, I guess, are going to be in this area. So our meeting is actually going to be over in front of the annex. So we get to stand on the sidewalk. Okay, so who else would like to speak and share their stories and frustrations about our medical marijuana program? Come on up, Cindy.
Hello, my name is Cindy Ruggiero. I like to educate people on the benefits of medical marijuana. I like to let them know that they can educate themselves. It's the easiest thing to do. They should go on YouTube and look up these videos that are very educational. We'll tell you the facts about medical marijuana, many uses it has. Some of the titles of these shows is the Science of Cannabis. They also have a really good one, Rick Simpson's story called Run from the Cure. You can cure yourself with the cannabinoid oil. Don't get it confused with the hemp oil that they sell in the stores, because the hemp oil is not the same thing. You need the CBDs that's in the oil. And if you have somebody that's suffering in pain or dying from cancer or an incurable disease, you have nothing to lose. Rick Simpson will give you the instructions right up on his site, how to make the oil the correct way. And when it's made the correct way, you don't even get high on this type of medicine. It's half a grain of rice is the size of it. You ingest it 3 to 4 times a day. And they say you should ingest like 30 to 60 grams within 3 months, and that should kill most cancers. You have an endocannabinoid system inside of your bodies. And for the longest time, they didn't know what the missing piece was. But the missing piece was the cannabinoids in the cannabis plant. They join up with the cannabinoid system in our body, and they actually tell the cancer to kill itself. And it's a proven fact. All you have to do is Google cancer and marijuana, the cure, and you'll find out most of the stuff you need to know. A lot of the people are still stuck in reefer madness. They believe in the lies that they've been told throughout the years. They said that it kills brain cells. You can look it up, scientific facts proving that it actually rebuilds brain cells and replenishes brain cells. It's helped people with brain injuries. help the brain heal a lot faster. It's been a cure for Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, the Dervet's children with epilepsy that are having 300 seizures a day. Their parents have been coming out here every week, and you've been hearing the results that they've been having, where their children went from 300 seizures a day, sometimes going for 5 to 7 days without any seizures at all on the cannabinoid medicine. They can get it made into an edible with Christie only allows the edibles until the age of 18. So children like Jack Storms, who's going to be 18 in a few years, there's no way that he can smoke a joint. He doesn't want to smoke. His mother doesn't want him to smoke. All he has to do is have access to the edibles after the age of 18. This is something that should be allowed for all ages. There should be no cutoff age at 18 because that's like a death sentence to a lot of these children. There's a lot of older people that just can't smoke. They don't want to smoke. There's people like my dad that rather than break the law, he decided to die, and he died a horrible death. And nobody should have to suffer like that when there's a plan out there that can help you. So I just want to tell everybody, educate yourselves, please. Don't believe in the lies that you've been told, because they're not true. It's propaganda. Just look it up for yourself, and you can find the truth out for yourself. And hopefully, if you have anybody that you want to save that has cancer, or Dorvet's, or Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, I heard it even helps with a lot of other things. Post-traumatic stress disorder is one of them. It can help a lot of these soldiers that are coming home from war and committing suicide. Well, if they can have a plant that's going to make them feel good, I don't see why anybody denies them that right. So I'm going to hand the mic over to whoever would like to take it, but I would also like to tell people that today we're having a trivia game contest where you can win free prizes. And come on out and see how educated you are on medical marijuana. So we're going to be having some questions. Come out and see if you know anything. This will be going on at 1:30. And thank you very much for coming out. Wish more people would come out and hang out and join us and learn the truth that medical marijuana saves lives. Thank you.